Transformers has been a juggernaut of a franchise since 1984. Had a kid that couldn't decide to get an action figure to fake fight with or a car toy to fake drive with? Transformers came in to get rid of the need to compromise. First starting as a toy line that became a cartoon TV show, animated movie, comic books, live action movies, the franchise dipped its wheels in any form of media, and probably succeeded to varying degrees. But especially as the world became more digital, any brand marketing towards kids is going to give a try at video games sooner or later, and Transformers is no exception, having a long history in the video game world that we're going to go over in its entirety in this video. So I'll jump right in, just like how Transformers did, as the brand started in 1984 and already had its first video game in the year 1985. With the simply titled The Transformers. And now I said 1985, but I'm seeing conflicting stuff online about whether this game actually came out in 1985 or 1986, so I'm not entirely certain. But regardless, this was released on the Sinclair Spectrum and the Commodore 64, developed by Denton Designs and published by Ocean Software. In this game, the Autobots look for the 4 parts of an Energon cube, while the Decepticons also search for the cube and will destroy the Autobots for it. You're in a 2D stage where you get to swap between all the available Autobots as you destroy all the Decepticons in the stage. Autobots that aren't being used go into pods that repair their shields. Autobots are able to transform in this game, shockingly, allowing you to go to robot mode, car mode, and jet mode, allowing you to fly around. Each Autobot being able to do all 3 modes. You end the stage by getting to the Autobot symbol. Game is meant to just be repeated, so it doesn't really have a real cinematic ending. The 5 Autobots that you can play in this game are Optimus Prime, Hound, Jazz, Mirage, and Bumblebee. Those are the first ever playable Transformers in any video game. Then, the original Decepticons that you fight in this game are Megatron, Soundwave, Starscream, Buzzsaw, Skywarp, Laserbeak, Ravage, Frenzy, and Rumble. But like I said, you don't get to play as any of them. And I am just going to be showing just like a picture of them normally, not an in-game footage of them, just because it's going to be hard to pick out which ones are which at times. And then just for later games, some Transformers are just playable in multiplayer, and I want to, when I showcase a Transformer, it just be the same style for each video game, so I'm just going to show them like this. Now, the game appears to have mixed reviews. Sinclair user gave it a 4 out of 5, but when Crashed interviewed Julian Rignall, a developer for the game, they asked what game they've made that they were least pleased with, and they answered, definitely Transformers. It's really a personal thing. We all like different products, but I think Transformers was an embarrassment. So do with that as you will. But this is the first ever Transformers game in all its glory. But let's see how this franchise changes over time, starting with the next game from this property. Then, in 1986, we got Transformers, The Battle to Save Earth. I don't have specific release dates still for some of these earlier games. We're just getting the year. But this was released on the Commodore 64, developed and published by Activision. The story for this game is that the Decepticons attack 9 different sites, and you as the player go to all of them in an attempt to defeat all the enemies there. And they attack some interesting stuff, like this giant mechanical Tyrannosaurus. Then later they attack the zoo, mainly the hippo exhibit. Game ends without much theatrics, just like the first game, with just the final score being shown. This game is in first person. Pretty surprising. I definitely thought any first person Transformers game would come way later, instead of the second one ever. But it's a first person shooter where you as an Autobot shoot all the Decepticons attempting to destroy or steal things within the stage. You get points for destroying those Decepticons, and Decepticons get points for what they're able to break or steal, and the score shown at the end of the game is the difference between the 2 scores. There are 8 playable Autobots in this game: Cliffjumper, Hound, Pipes, Cup, Bumblebee, Blur, then Hot Rod, and Rodimus Prime. These are the same character, but they are listed as different ones in this game. Interesting. This is one of the few games to not have Optimus Prime in it, and this is due to the events of the TV show. No spoilers. Then there are no specific Decepticons in this game. Now, this game seems to be perceived as mediocre at best, with most review sites having the game listed in the 40s to 50. But now to the other games of this year. As also in 1986, we got The Transformers: Mystery of the Convoy, released December 5th, 1986. First full release date. It was released to the NES, or more specifically the Famicom, as this was a Japan exclusive, developed by Isco and published by Takara. You play as Ultra Magnus as he attempts to find the missing Optimus Prime. Now, I think this is a story that is stated elsewhere and not in the actual game, as the gameplay shows nothing of this quest, and the ending definitely has no resolution to this, so the story might as well not exist. The game is a pretty simple side-scroller where you take on different Decepticon forces and a boss at the end of each stage, there being 10 stages. You're able to transform to go faster and dodge attacks. You can shoot in either form, can pick up power-ups, which do a multitude of helpful things. You can also unlock Rodimus Prime to be played. So that means the playable Autobots in this game are just Rodimus Prime and Ultra Magnus, but apparently Bumblebee and Optimus Prime do appear in this one. And then for the Decepticons, there's Blitzwing, Frenzy, Laserbeak, Ramjet, Ratbat, Ravage, Skywarp, Starscream, Thrust, Thundercracker, Minosaur, Bruticus, Megatron, and Trypticon, all appearing. But none of them playable. So the mystery of this game was supposedly the identity of Optimus Prime's killer. Since the film that Optimus died in did not have a Japanese release until 4 years later, this game was supposed to help fill in that gap. This game was known for its extreme difficulty and poor stage design, with OneUp.com calling it a perfect example of a shameless tie-in. So unfortunately, it doesn't seem Transformer games are off to the best start, so we'll move on. Then we got Transformers: The Headmasters, released August 28th, 1987. Released to the Famicom Disk System, a add-on to the Famicom, developed and published by Takara. We see Cybertron where Galvatron puppeteers Vector Sigma and Trypticon has conquered Earth. Also, Rodimus Prime, Hardhead, Brainstorm, and Highbrow have all been captured, allowing the Decepticons to take control. The main protagonist, Chrome Dome, works to free his fellow Autobots, which he slowly does, building the Autobot strength where they all go together to Fortress Maximus and fight and defeat Scorponok at the Decepticons' final base. The gameplay is very similar to the previous game, Mystery of the Convoy, with two big differences. A health bar, which I think is a good addition, but the other difference, you can't transform at will. Just a terrible idea for a Transformers game. It's like a Spider-Man without web swinging. Just a bad idea. There's multiple stages in this game, with 2 parts for each stage, above ground in vehicle mode and underground where you play in robot fighter mode. Each Autobot has 3 stats: Energon, which acts as health, Power, the strength of attacks, and Speed, which is speed. Each stat is able to be upgraded from collecting power-ups from dropped enemies. The Autobots featured in this game is Chrome Dome, Rodimus Prime, and then Hardhead, Highbrow, Brainstorm, and Fortress Maximus are all in this game. And then the Decepticons that do appear are Mindwipe, Scourge, Trypticon, Bruticus, Minosaur, Abominus, Galvatron, Sixshot, and Scorponok. This is another game without Optimus and Bumblebee. I'm not too familiar with Transformers lore and history, so I was totally expecting Optimus and Bee to be in every single game. Instead, the face of Transformers so far has been Rodimus. Good for him. Now, I couldn't find anything about how the game was received when it came out, but all I could see was modern reviews, and none were positive. Do with that as you want, but let's move on. Hopefully we get closer to every game having plenty of information. Then a whole decade passed in between Transformers games, as the next one doesn't come out until December 2nd, 1997. That being Beast Wars Transformers. Released on PlayStation and Windows, developed by CSEE Studio Cambridge, published by Hasbro Interactive. In this game, the Maximals and Predacons crash land on a Earth-like planet with loads of Energon. Both factions set up bases and take the forms of the planet's inhabitants, dinosaurs and not dinosaurs, and go to war. Things get more interesting when the Skrilks, interdimensional aliens, land on the planet, causing the Maximals and Predacons to fight them as well. Each game ends with whichever faction you picked defeating the faction you didn't pick. The gameplay is that of a third-person shooter where you get to pick between either playing as the Maximals or Predacons. Each side has 6 playable Transformers, which you mostly unlock on rescue missions, but most missions in this game are you making a raid on bases or assets of the opposing side. Your Transformer can switch between robot mode and beast mode. Each Transformer has their own stats, such as firepower, endurance, running speed, and energon resistance. If a Transformer dies in a stage, it's failed and must be replayed from the beginning, and the defeated Transformer is lost and must complete a rescue mission again to get them back. The playable Maximals are Optimus Primal, Cheetor, Rat Trap, Dinobot, Rhinox, and Arizor. The playable Predacons are Megatron, Scorponok, Tarantulas, Black Arachina, Inferno, and Pterosaur. This is the first game in the series to have voice acting, but it's not the same cast as the TV show. And the Transformer Wiki calls the voices not passable like the shows. Game also has a tie-in comic to promote the game. Also, finally, the PlayStation version was entirely single-player, while the PC version had an option for LAN parties up to 8. The reception for this game was that it was ripped to shreds. GameSpot commented, while the process does have a certain power of Grayskull charm initially, taking damage every time you want to deal it out gets old fast. The scores of this game range as low as 2 out of 5 up to a 5 out of 10. I'd say most ratings have this game sitting in the 30s. And now, while this game itself might not be remembered too fondly, it did do one massive thing that has become a staple of a lot of Transformers games, and it's what I kind of associate being the most interesting thing about these video games, and that is the choice of which side you play on. This game being between the Maximals and the Predacons, but this choice between two different Transformers factions and that affecting how the game is played has massive effect on a lot of the games that we're going to see later. Then the next game that we get is called, might struggle with pronouncing this correctly, Kaito Transformers Beast Wars, Beast Senshi Seikyo Ketisen. Released March 19th, 1999. Released exclusively to the Game Boy Color. Developed by Garbrain, published by Takara. In this one, the Maximals and Predacons fight over a giant wishing energon quartz after a voice said it would be the prize of the strongest. So all the Transformers fight over it, with the final fight being Megatron, even if you play as him. You beat him and take the quartz, with the ending varying depending on who you play as. So I'll go over all the playable Transformers and what their endings look like. For Optimus Primal, it's the most vanilla one. He defeats all the Predacons with it, ending their war and saving the universe. Cheetor wishes to be the most powerful Maximal, becoming Supreme Commander, but couldn't handle the responsibility and fled after 3 days. Scuba reverses all environmental damage caused by the Predacons, one of the nicer ones. Leo Convoy, they just seal the quartz away, not wanting it to fall in the wrong hands. Star Upper, since they want to be strong off their own ability, they don't use the quartz. Boring ones back to back. Megatron takes the quartz and sets out for his mortal enemy, Optimus Prime. And this means that this Megatron is the same Megatron that we see in other games, which I think is contradictory because I think Predacon Megatron is supposed to be a different character from regular Megatron. But then Galvatron absorbs the power of the quartz and accidentally destroys his own base. Megastorm gloats about how he's going to use the quartz to surpass Galvatron just for the quartz to be stolen from him. Gilladart stashes the quartz to use near the end of the war as a final resort, as they don't believe the war is near over yet. And then Artemis/Moon. Now, these are separate characters but act as one fighter, just in different modes. But doesn't know how powerful the quartz is and just takes it home to use as a decoration. This is a 2D fighting game with each Transformer having its own unique specials and attacks, as well as each being able to switch between robot and beast mode, changing how they fight. The game has some other modes like Team Battles, which is just a team of 3, where it's the next man up when whoever you're fighting as dies, as well as a quick draw minigame. There's also secret characters you can unlock and play as, although they don't have story endings. Those Transformers being DJ and Icar October Bacchus for the Maximals, and Starscream, BB, and Skyla for the Predacons. If the name didn't give it away, this is a Japanese exclusive, with its English name being Dual Fight Transformers Beast Wars. Beast Warriors Strongest Decisive Battle. What the fuck is that name? That's a long name. And then I couldn't really find any critic reviews or an aggregate rating for this game. But this time it wouldn't be a long wait for the next game, as in within the same year we got Transformers Beast Wars Transmetals, released October 1st, 1999, to the N64 and PlayStation. Developed by Locomotive for the N64 and Wave Edge for the PS1. This game was published by Takara for Japan and then Bay Area Multimedia for North America. The game starts with the Maximals having captured Megatron and begin to head back to Cybertron, but through a transwarp is able to send a message to his younger self, warning him. This causes some dimensional shenanigans, I guess, and gives the Maximals and Predacons Transmetal boost, re-sparking the fight. Now for the PS1 version, there are 2 campaigns to play through, the Predacons and Maximals, each with their own ending. Maximals ending in Optimus Primal leading his team on the Predacon ship and stealing the Golden Disc. The Predacons ending is Megatron lures out the Maximals into an ambush by him and his henchmen. Now the N64 version has an ending for each Transformer that you beat the game as. So once again, I'll list each ending, doubling as a way to tell you which Transformers were playable in this game. Optimus Primal. Primal leads the Maximals to capture Megatron, who they put on an Autobot ship and begin to take him back to Cybertron, but Megatron manages to send a message back to his younger self. This makes me think that the Optimus Primal ending is sort of this game's true ending, or at least causes a never-ending loop for the game. And then Rat Trap. Rat Trap straight up causes the death of Megatron with a clever sneak attack. Rat Trap was ready for the war to end. And then Cheetor. Optimus Primal is injured in battle, causing Cheetor to go in a rage that causes him to charge into battle, winning and ending the war. And then Arizor and Tigatron. The war is over, and the lovers decide to stay on Earth together and watch over the planet as it heals from war, wondering if a Maximal and Predacon could ever get along. Megatron. Megatron defeats the Maximals, then enters the Ark to defeat his true archenemy, Optimus Prime and the Matrix of Leadership. Megatron has a level of hate I kind of respect. Tarantulas. Turns on both sides and escapes back to his original time, informing his leaders of the Ark, leading to him returning with multiple battle cruisers intending to end the Beast Wars for good. Waspinator. Flips on everyone, beating all the Transformers on Earth till they leave, and he is then worshipped as a god by the proto-humans. Pterosaur. Beats the Maximals but betrays Megatron and becomes the new Predacon leader. But he doesn't find a way off Earth and causes the Predacons to freeze over during the Ice Age. Now this game has 5 secret Transformers you can unlock, one being Tigatron, whose ending I already went over since it's the same as Arizor, but there's 4 other Transformers and their endings are Ravage, betrays Megatron, shocking, every Predacon seems to be doing that, and uses the Ark to download other Decepticons into a new robot army and head back to Cybertron, and sets out to conquer time. Black Archena. Silverbolt convinces them to switch sides and become a Maximal, shifting the war in the Maximal's favor, causing a Maximal victory. Starscream destroys both the Maximals and Predacons after getting a new body, then uses the Ark to fuse his new and old body and heads back to Cybertron. Megatron X. Possessed by the original Megatron, he defeats the Maximals and later takes Cybertron, then plans to expand his conquest. This is a 3D one-on-one fighting game with the characters having melee and range attacks, as well as having 3 modes in battle: Beast, Robot, and Vehicle modes. This game takes place in an alternate timeline from the Beast Wars TV show, specifically Season 2, after Transmetals and Fusor are introduced. This game seemed to have less than mediocre reviews, with game rankings having this game sit at a 48%, this being the last dedicated Beast Wars game. And if the 80s were the era of Gen 1 games for Transformers, the 90s was obviously the Beast Wars, as well as it being its fighting game era. But we move on to a new millennia. For the first game in the new century, in 2003, we got Transformers, released exclusively to PlayStation 2, developed by Winkysoft, and published by Atlas. This is a game where you get to choose between playing for the Autobots or the Decepticons. First time you get to make that choice, which we'll see a lot of. embarking on missions and gaining allies along the way, mainly fighting over the Zell Quartz, which Soundwave used to become the new leader of the Decepticons. The Decepticons want to use the quartz to end the war, and the Autobots must stop them before they can. But Starscream steals the quartz and flies into space, where he loses power, leaving Starscream adrift in space. Also, I think during this game there's time-traveling Transformers. This franchise is more confusing than I thought it was. But for the gameplay, it's a firefight in a small enclosed area where you have to defeat your enemies with the ability to switch between robot mode and vehicle mode, with different moves using different amounts of energy, so you have to manage your energy use while in combat. Transformers also have special attacks unique to the Transformers. There's also upgrade systems for both the Transformer stats and the weapons they use that you can access outside of combat. This game probably has the most playable Transformers so far, with playable Autobots being Optimus Prime, Jazz, Wheeljack, Hound, Ratchet, Bumblebee, Rodimus Prime, Hot Rod, Cup, Ultra Magnus, Springer, RC, Blur, Chrome Dome, Brainstorm, Hardhead, Highbrow, Grotesque, and Double Cross. And then for the Decepticons, it's Megatron, Starscream, Soundwave, Shockwave, Blitzwing, Astrotrain, Galvatron, Cyclonus, Scourge, Octane, Sharkticon, Full Tilt, Weird Wolf, Skullcruncher, Mindwipe, Snapdragon, Ape-Face, Six-Shot, and Dark Hot Rod. And even more unplayable Transformers from both sides can be seen in the game. Also, this game was a Japanese exclusive. While originally planned to have been released in America, the plan was unfortunately dropped. I have a hard time finding real reviews for this game, as well as it being a hard time to find this game, as apparently it also had an alternative title, Transformers Call of the Future, which is what I was able to find the gameplay under. But the informal reviews for this game that I were able to find were pretty negative, mostly saying it had bad controls and terrible AI. But that's not it for the year. As also in 2003, we got Dream Mix TV World Fighters, released December 18th, 2003 to the GameCube and PlayStation 2, developed by Bitstep and published by Hudson. This is a crossover fighting game between Konami and Hudson video game characters and Takara Toyline characters. This game features Binbogami, Bomberman, Manjimaru, Sengoku, Master Higgins, Momotaro, and Yugo Ogami from Hudson Games, Moe, Power Procon, Simon Belmont, Solid Snake, and Twin Bee from Konami, then Asuka, Likakayami, M121 Mason, Tyson Granger, and then most importantly, Megatron and Optimus Prime, all from Takara Toyline characters. This isn't a main Transformers game, so this is all I'm going to say on it, that this is here, but just wanted to point out that there is some crossover game that does include a couple Transformers. Then, just 1 year later, we got another Transformers game titled Transformers, releasing May 7th, 2004. Once again, a PlayStation 2 exclusive, developed by Melbourne House and published by Atari. Years ago, Minicons fled Cybertron to Earth. Then later, on Cybertron, the Decepticons are winning the war with Megatron and Optimus Prime facing off when they hear a distress call from the Minicons, leading to the Autobots and Decepticons going after to retrieve them. The Autobots first land in the Amazon, fighting the Decepticons, Cyclonus, and one of their heavy units, but retrieve the Minicons, Sparkplug, Jolt, and Longarm. Autobots then go to a human facility in Antarctica, where they had found Minicons, but they also find Starscream, which they beat. Then, back in the Amazon, the Autobots fight and defeat Cyclonus, and then observe Decepticon units moving into the Atlantic Ocean. The Autobots follow the units until they find the Decepticon Tidal Wave in ship mode and learn that the Decepticons are headed towards Alaska. Tidal Wave then goes giant robo mode, and the Autobots have to take him down, which they manage to do. The Autobots work their way to Alaska, having a run-in with Starscream, who they beat and capture and attempt to interrogate him, and he won't cooperate. So they just hack his memory. The Autobots find the location of Megatron's base on a volcanic island in the Pacific, which they infiltrate and fight Megatron, who they beat, and Optimus wants to save, but Megatron allows himself to fall in the volcano. This causes the Autobots to think they are victorious, which they are, on Earth. But Unicron now looms over Cybertron. The Autobots return to Cybertron and see Unicron attacking, so the Minicons assemble and give enough power to the Autobots to destroy Unicron, who explodes, and the Autobots and Minicons celebrate a free Cybertron. In this game, you play as 3 different Autobots: Optimus Prime, Red Alert, and Hotshot, each with a different playstyle and can switch between different modes at any time. The mini-cons unlock different boosts for the Autobots you play as. Most of this game is exploring an open environment in third person, finding mini-cons. Some of the dialogue in this game is taken from Transformers the movie. This game was very well received, some even calling it the best Transformers game at the time, but it did receive some hate simply because it wasn't based on the Gen 1 versions of the characters. In 2010, it was ranked as the number 83rd best PlayStation 2 game by IGN. Then, in 2007, something major came out in the Transformers franchise. That's right, the first of the Michael Bay live-action Transformer movies was released. And this movie came out during a time where every major movie seemingly had a video game tie-in. Transformers was no different, having multiple releases of the same game, but given the different consoles and some of their limitations, does result in the games being very different from each other. So, with the movie releasing, we're going to look through all the different games that tied in to the movie. One of them came out a week earlier than all of the others, that being June 12th, 2007's Transformers mobile game, developed by Glue and published by Glue. In this game, Optimus Prime is stranded on Earth, the Hoover Dam specifically. Optimus Prime is damaged and has to be repaired, so you guide him through the Hoover Dam and you fight with him as he repairs himself. It's a side-scrolling 2D game with beat-em-up and shooter elements, including even the older Transformers game. This is one of the simplest ones that's out there. And it looks like Optimus Prime is the only playable one, and then Bumblebee appears in this game as well. Oh, and then IGN's review for the game was essentially calling it simple but fun for a mobile game, giving it a 7 out of 10. Now, I quickly went over this one because this one, out of every game, I think, even these older ones, the first Transformers on and on, this game has the least amount of information out there. So much so that when I first wrote the script for this video, and I was doing all the research, I didn't know this game existed. I saw somewhere reference to Transformers Mobile for this tie-in game, but when I first looked it up, all I would see was the PSP results. Nothing about just a mobile phone game. So I didn't know this game existed until a later game. When I was reading through its wiki, the publishers for that one, the developers for that one, made this game as well. And it referenced it. So this almost slipped through the cracks. But here is the least talked about, least known Transformers game. But we move on to the other tie-ins. All of the other Transformer tie-in games came out June 19th, 2007. And to start, we'll go over the console version of Transformers, the game, released to the PS2, PS3, Xbox 360, Wii, and PC, developed by Traveler's Tales and published by Activision. This game is a tie-in to the movie with two different stories to play through, the Autobots and Decepticons. The Autobots side follows the events of the movies a bit closer. Bumblebee lands, befriends Sam, fights Barricade, and clears the way for more Transformers to land down. The Transformers then have a run-in with Sector 7, ultimately resulting in the capture of Bumblebee. And as Optimus goes to save him, he fights Shockwave, who he beats, and Prime gets the Wiki glasses, and then intercepts a message from Starscream saying Megatron and the Allspark are in the Hoover Dam. Autobots roll out towards them. Bumblebee manages to escape on his own and escapes with the Allspark. But the now awoken Megatron and the rest of the Decepticons are on their trail. This leads to a final fight between Optimus and Megatron, where Optimus uses the Allspark to kill Megatron. This leaves the Autobots victorious, but stranded on Earth, with Optimus Prime vowing to protect their new home. Then, for the Decepticon side, Blackout destroys a military base to start off the game, with the survivors then dealt with Scorponok. Then Blackout and Scorponok link up and continue the attack. They then receive a message from Starscream and leave the area. Then, Barricade tracks down Sam Witwicky, kills Bumblebee, and gets the glasses, and we then see Sam and Michaela get arrested by Sector 7. We then see more Decepticons come online on Earth and start to attack different human facilities, growing the Decepticon army. Starscream and Blackout arrived at the Hoover Dam and attack it until Megatron is free, where he now takes control of the Decepticons. The Decepticons then attack the city where Jazz is killed, uttering, "Optimus, I tried." I hate villain storylines it hurts to watch sometimes. Your favorite characters just dying, including Ironhide, who is then killed. The Decepticons are going crazy right now. We then finally get the Megatron and Optimus Prime fight, where they're falling off buildings and more ultimately ending in Megatron taking the cube and absorbing it, killing a bunch of people, defeating Optimus. Megatron then sits on the Lincoln Memorial as a throne and orders the eradications of the humans on Earth. The gameplay is playing as Emission's Autobot or Decepticon, exploring a small given area in third-person mode, able to transform at will, climb walls, and fight, with different type of attacks, including item throwing. The playable Transformers in this game are Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Ironhide, and Jazz for the Autobots, and then Megatron, Starscream, Barricade, Blackout, and Scorponok for the Decepticons. Only Ratchet is the non-playable Autobot, then Frenzy, Bone Crusher, Brawl, and Shockwave are the non-playable Decepticons. The game seems to sit around 50% on Metacritic, criticized for poor vehicle controls and dull combat, but praised for the destruction you can do in the games. The other movie tie-in we got was Transformers the Game for the PSP, developed by Savage Entertainment and published by Activision. This game follows roughly the same story as the console version, except you don't pick a side, you just swap back and forth between the two sides. Now, the overall story is mostly the same, it's just that the presentation is pretty different. Combat is also similar, playing as the given Transformer in an area, ability to transform, fight with melee and range attacks, but the biggest difference being the cast of characters. This version has the most playable Transformers in any version of this game. The PSP version allows you to play as Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Megatron, Blackout, Shockwave, Ironhide, Ratchet, Jazz, Hound, Starscream, Barricade, Scorponok, Frenzy, Bone Crusher, Dreadwing, Trailbreaker, Sideswipe, Hoist, Wheeljack, Swindle, Dropkick, Longarm, Brawl, Mixmaster, and Thundercracker. I didn't look for reviews to tell the reception of the game. I decided to just share what the Transformers Wiki had to say on the game. It is absolutely abominable in just about every imaginable way. Imagine walking through molasses while trying to shoot with a target lock-on, which refuses to live up to its name and is attached to the most painfully unhelpful button in relation to the position of the analog stick, and you're halfway there. Jab yourself in the eye with a rusty fork to complete the journey. That's actually on the wiki. Love the passion. Then, for the final movie tie-in game, we have one that has a special place in my heart. Transformers, either Autobots or Decepticons. A video game that you have two options to buy from. This was released exclusively to the Nintendo DS, developed by Vicarious Visions, and published by Activision. This game has two different stories depending on which one you buy, so I'll start with the Autobots version. This game starts off with the Creatabot landing on Earth, at the Vegas Strip. That's where the tutorial takes place, with Ironhide acting as your character's teacher. Tutorial ends with you having to kill 3 Decepticons and then the Creatabot from the Decepticon game acting as a boss. You go to a city, Tranquility, and continue with the tutorial now being taught by Bumblebee, who later you get to play as and chase down and fight Barricade. Then you go to the Arctic with Ironhide in search of Megatron. Unfortunately, it looks like Megatron has already been taken elsewhere. Then you get to play as Ironhide and fight Starscream. Then, back at Tranquility, Bumblebee clears a safe place for Optimus Prime to land. Then Jazz has a run-in with Blackout after finding out that Sector 7 has Megatron and the Allspark at the Hoover Dam. The team then heads towards the Hoover Dam, but is attacked by Sector 7, so Bumblebee sacrifices himself, getting captured so the team can move on. Optimus decides to leave Bumblebee behind and go after Megatron, pissing off Ironhide, who says all Optimus wants to do is kill Megatron. I do not like this characterization of Prime. The team starts to attack the Hoover Dam, Jazz uploading a virus, the Creatabot taking down its physical defenses, infiltrating the dam, and rescuing Bumblebee, who grabs his weapon chip, the Allspark, and dips. Optimus Prime then clears a path for Bee and others to escape, killing Barricade in the process. But then we see Megatron thaw out and escape. Then, back in Tranquility, Bee evades Sector 7 and Decepticon forces, acting separately, just to be clear. Then Ratchet kills Blackout. The team then regroups and Optimus has the Allspark, but then Megatron steals the Allspark, teeing up the final showdown in the game. So the Creatabot gets the Allspark and shoves it into Megatron's spark, and somehow kills the Creatabot. So then Optimus Prime and Megatron fight, with Optimus coming out on top, and vows to make Earth the new home of the Transformers and protect it. honoring the dying wish of Create-A-Bot. Then, for the Decepticon version of the story, it's very similar, with one different location from the other game, and obviously an alternate ending. The tutorial is just the evil version of the Autobot one with Barricade as the teacher. Then instead of Bumblebee chasing Barricade, it's the other way around in this game, getting to play as Barricade. Then you get sent to Qatar and mostly just fuck shit up there with Blackout and fight Ratchet, who just runs away, never to be seen again. But you do learn from Starscream that Megatron and the Allspark are on Earth. Then, back on Tranquility, you keep causing more destruction, beating up Bumblebee, but then the Decepticons head over to the Hoover Dam in search of their leader. The Decepticons then revive and repair Megatron. Then you get to play Megatron and kill Jazz. Then the Decepticons go back to Tranquility in search of the Allspark. Starscream kills B and gets the Allspark. Then kills Barricade because Starscream's a bitch. Then Starscream flees. We then get the fight between Megatron and Optimus Prime, which in this version, Optimus Prime is killed. The game then ends back at the casino strip the game started at. Create-A-Bot gets the Allspark and slams it into Starscream, greatly injuring him, but doesn't hurt Starscream at all. This doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get why the person putting in the Allspark is the one getting hurt and not the person that's getting the Allspark put into them. But anyways, Megatron tracks down Starscream and kills him. Then Megatron eats the spark of the Create-A-Bot, calls all the other Decepticons weak, and then flies away, ending the game in a very weird fashion. In this game, you get to scan vehicles as your Create-A-Bot, allowing you to have a wide selection of vehicles for you to play as and to switch between. As far as I can think, I think this is the only game that you can do that in. I think every other game, you either choose a vehicle form to be, or you're playing as already established Transformers with established vehicle forms. This is the only one where you get to play as one Transformer that gets to switch between multiple vehicle forms. Very cool to see. Wish it would come back in another game. This game allows you to transform whenever you want. Melee attacks, range attacks with machine gun and cannon weapons. Then you could pick stuff up from the environment. This game is just really rewarding with destruction. This game was great at driving around in free play and just doing whatever you wanted as a Transformer. The playable Transformers in this game were the Create-A-Bot, Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Ironhide, Ratchet, Jazz, Megatron, Starscream, Barricade, Blackout, and Brawl. With factoring in how many vehicles you can play for Create-A-Bot, this might give you the most vehicle options of any Transformer game so far. And then the wiki page for this game refers to the Autobot version as Pokeformers Red, which I found super funny. And with how different the versions are for the story, it might be more justified in having different versions for this game than even the Pokemon games. And now, this is actually a game I played a lot as a kid, specifically the Autobot version, I think. So all I'll say for the reception of this game is that this game was fucking awesome to play as a kid. But that is it. That is all the games for the first Transformers movie, the Bayverse Transformer movies, all the tie-in games. So now we kind of move on to some of the more regular games. We then move on to the year 2008, where we got 2 Transformers games, starting off with Transformers Animated, the game. Released October 21st, 2008, released exclusively to the Nintendo DS. Developed by Artificial Minded Movement and published by Activision. The Autobots discover malfunctioning drones, and an Allspark fragment in the Sumdac assembly plant, and a communication device used between Lockdown and Megatron. Megatron wanting Lockdown to track down the Allspark fragment so Megatron and the other Decepticons can teleport into the heart of Cybertron. The team tracks down more Allspark fragments, and then have a battle with Megatron that leads to Megatron, Optimus Prime, and Bulkhead to teleport to Cybertron. So Bumblebee and Sari, the most prevalent human character so far, track down more Allspark fragments, and after a battle with Lockdown, Bumblebee is able to teleport to help his Autobot teammates. The team then battles Megatron to stop him from activating a space bridge, which would teleport in all the Decepticon forces to Cybertron. Thankfully, our heroes emerge victorious, resulting in Megatron fleeing. For his efforts, Ultra Magnus offers Prime a position in the Elite Guard, which he turns down to return to Earth and get rid of all the Decepticons there. This one plays pretty differently from the previous games, as while the characters and world are in 3D, you actually move and play in more of like a 2D way. So this game is actually mostly a puzzle game, but does also have 2 modes windowing levels, Mission Mode and Race Mode. Race mode is just a simple race where you play as an Autobot racing some Decepticon. Mission mode lets you play as different Autobots doing simple combat, doing puzzles, and each Autobot using their unique skill set. Prime's axe, B's stingers and wall climb, and then Bulkhead's wrecking ball, as well as his weight coming into play for different puzzles. The playable Transformers in this game are just the Autobots, specifically Prime, B, Bulkhead, and Prowl. While the game also features Ratchet and Ultra Magnus, and then the Decepticons that appear are Megatron, Lockdown, Shockwave, Lugnut, and Blitzwing. This game has the same voice actors as its TV show's source material, and while the show is very similar to Season 2, this game does have a different ending, making it non-canon to the show. The game received pretty favorable reviews, sitting around the 70s on game rankings and Metacritic, with the puzzle being called thoughtful and were a positive, but the game's minimal transformations in a Transformers game was questioned, something I will always agree with. But let's see the other game of the year. That game being Transformers G1 Awakening, released November 12th, 2008 to iOS, Android, BlackBerry, and WebOS. This one was developed and published by Glue. Millions of years ago, the Transformers crash land on Earth and went into stasis. Then, in the present day, all the Decepticons wake up, but just Bumblebee and Ratchet are woken up from the Autobots. So Bumblebee, with the help of Ratchet, have to fight Decepticons and gain Energon to power back up the other Autobots, starting with Optimus Prime and Metroplex. Then, the Autobots fight more Decepticons, one of which being Jetfire, who B convinces to defect to the Autobot side and go on a mission to the Decepticon side, where he powers down generators protecting a space bridge, which Prime wants to use to go to Cybertron and reconnect with any other Autobots out there. But Jetfire gets caught by Megatron, who starts to beat him, but thanks to Jetfire being faster, he's able to escape. The Autobots then use the space bridge to get back to Cybertron, only to learn it was a trap, and that Shockwave has already conquered all of Cybertron, and all the Autobots are imprisoned and their weapons taken away. Bumblebee and Ratchet manage to escape, find an armory, arm themselves, and free the other Autobots, who flee back to Earth. Back on Earth, the Autobots save Grimlock from some Decepticons. Grimlock then just runs off. Autobots then follow a distress signal. It's a trap, again. But they manage to escape back to the Ark, their ship, but were followed by the Decepticons. But the Autobots manage to defeat them, ending the war on Earth. Prime then plans an attack on Shockwave on Cybertron. So they go back to Cybertron, have some Autobots attack a power facility responsible for Shockwave's defenses, and Optimus and B go to fight Shockwave directly. And Prime and B are no match for Shockwave, who defeats them both. But before Shockwave can finish them, Grimlock comes out of nowhere and kills Shockwave, ending the game. Very abrupt, random ending. This is the first turn-based game in this series where on a given level you control different Transformers on a grid and plan strategic attacks. They can transform, while in vehicle mode they offer greater movement, and robot mode offers greater attack. This being one of the more strategic-based games Transformers has so far. This game has the Autobots Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Ratchet, Metroplex, Blaster, Eject, Rewind, Ironhide, Sunstreaker, Sideswipe, Prowl, Jetfire, Smokescreen, Grimlock, and then for the Decepticons, Megatron, Starscream, Trypticon, Soundwave, Skywarp, Thundercracker, Frenzy, Rumble, and Shockwave. This game being somewhat of a throwback as it's based on the Generation 1 version of the franchise. This game was praised when it came out, the strategy for the game being a welcome addition to the franchise, with an IGN reviewer going as far to call it the best Transformer game he's ever played. But now in 2009, we get back to movie tie-in games, and the multitude of ones that there are. Once again, the first one that came out, earlier than all the rest, was the mobile one, when June 8th, 2009, we got Transformers Revenge of the Fallen mobile game, developed and published by Glue. The game starts with Optimus Prime heading over to China, where he has a run-in with Starscream, who escapes with an Allspark fragment. We then see Starscream meeting with the Fallen, happy that Starscream has retrieved the Allspark fragment. Then Starscream attacks a nest base guarded by Bumblebee, who at first gets the upper hand, but Starscream uses a null ray on him and then revives Megatron, and the Decepticons flee. The Fallen then commands Megatron and Starscream to go to Egypt to activate the Great Machine. Optimus tells B to meet with the ex-Decepticon, Jetfire, at the Great Pyramid, but when he gets there, Jetfire has already been defeated by Devastator. B then defeats Devastator, but Megatron then comes and takes B hostage. Optimus then arrives, puts on some of Jetfire's parts, then the fight between Megatron and Optimus Prime commences, with Prime emerging victorious. This is when the Fallen decides to attack, so Prime uses the Matrix and releases a strong attack defeating him. Autobots celebrate their victory as Megatron escapes. Gameplay is the same as the first mobile game, just a side-scroller, beat up some Decepticons, jumping around platforms, and are able to transform, thankfully. This game features Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Ironhide, Jetfire, Megatron, Starscream, The Fallen, and Devastator. But now, let's look at some of the more comprehensive tie-in video games. That being Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, the console version, released June 23rd, 2009. This was released to Windows, Wii, PS2, PS3, and Xbox 360. It was developed by Luxaflux for the PS3 and 360 versions, Beenox for Windows, Chrome Studios for PS2 and Wii, all published by Activision. The story for the Windows, PS3, and Xbox 360 have two different campaigns for the Autobots and the Decepticons, while the Wii and PS2 versions just have the Autobot campaign, with small differences but none really worth noting. As usual, I'll start with the Autobot story. So the Autobots working with Nest are sent to Shanghai, where Ironhide defeats Sideways and Optimus takes down Demolisher, who warns that the Fallen shall rise again. The Decepticons then find the location of Megatron's body, and while the Autobots attempt to stop them, the Decepticons retrieve his remains and revive him with an Allspark fragment. Sam Witwicky gets kidnapped, but is then rescued by Bumblebee, who defeats Grindor to do so. Ness then points Sam and Bumblebee to a museum that houses Jetfire, an old former Decepticon. After fighting some Decepticons, they awaken Jetfire, who takes them to Cairo, Egypt. Jetfire reveals that an ancient machine called the Sun Harvester was left there by the Dynasty of Primes. The Sun Harvester is able to drain a sun of its energy and turn it into Energon. The Autobots then find Sam and Jetfire, with Optimus having to protect them from Megatron and Starscream, which he does, but unfortunately, Jetfire is greatly injured, so he gives his wings to Optimus Prime to use in the final fight against the Fallen, an ancient Transformer who has awoken and has activated the Sun Harvester. While Optimus Prime head towards the Fallen, Bumblebee takes down Devastator. Optimus then fights the Fallen, beating him, and the Fallen's body falls into the Sun Harvester, causing it to explode. Ending the Autobot campaign with Prime thanking his troops and the Decepticons fleeing Earth, but the Autobots knowing they'll come back. The war isn't over. Now for the Decepticon storyline. The Decepticons are searching for Megatron's body, fighting Autobots as they do so, with Starscream acting as the team's leader. After failing to hunt down Michaela Bain for her All-Star Spark, the Decepticons capture NSA Chief Galloway. The Decepticons learn the location of Megatron's body in the Laurentian Abyss, and that an All-Star fragment is in Nest custody. The Decepticons then retrieve the All-Spark fragment and lead an attack where they retrieve Megatron's body and revive him. The Decepticons then kidnap Sam, and Megatron defeats Optimus Prime. Sam is later rescued by the Autobots and heads to a museum. Starscream destroys the museum, but it was too late as Sam and Jetfire escape to Cairo, Egypt. Megatron fights and defeats Bumblebee and Jetfire. Megatron then betrays the Fallen, kills him to remain the leader of the Decepticons. Megatron then learns that Optimus destroyed the Sun Harvester. Megatron declares victory for the Decepticons and plans to make a new army to finally destroy the Autobots for good. This game has a central hub for mission selection, allowing the player to decide what mission they want to play, making the story a little less linear, although some missions need to be completed to unlock later ones. Also, missions have predetermined characters to play as, instead of allowing you to pick from a selection of available Transformers. In the actual missions, you have melee attacks and range attacks that can be overused and can cause your gun to overheat and have to cool down, plus wall climbing and the ability to transform, which is not available in the Wii and PS2 versions, as well as those versions not having the mission hub, just being strictly linear. There's also a special attack that has its own energy bar you fill up as you play. The Transformers for this game are Optimus Prime, Jetfire, Bumblebee, Ironhide, Ratchet, Breakaway, and Jazz, all playable for the Autobots, and then the Decepticons have Megatron, Barricade, Dead End, Starscream, Grindor, Longhaul, Soundwave, Sideways, and Sunstorm, all playable. Then the Fallen, Devastator, and Demolisher for non-playable bots. Across all versions of the game, the only Transformers playable in all versions are Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Megatron, Starscream, and Sideways, surprisingly. The game seems to sit in the mediocre range, as the game sits anywhere from the 40s to the 60s, depending on which console version. Different quotes from reviews being strong multiplayer game, complete and utter lack of presentation, and a significant improvement from its terrible predecessor. Then we have the PSP exclusive version of the game, developed by Savage Entertainment, also published by Activision. There's two campaigns for this game, which is definitely commonplace now, Autobot side and Decepticon side, both games having 4 major missions. The Autobot campaign starts in Shanghai, where they stop Demolisher from stealing the Allspark fragment from a Nest convoy. Then, in the North Atlantic, a now revived Megatron leads an attack on a Nest base, but the Autobots are able to defeat the Decepticon forces, causing them and Megatron to retreat. Then, on the east coast of America, Sam Witwicky has been captured by Decepticons, causing the Autobots to rescue him, which they have to defeat Starscream to do. Sam then heads to a museum to meet with Jetfire, who teleports him to Egypt with him. Jetfire then explains the history of the Fallen and the Star Harvester to the Autobots. Megatron and Starscream then shoot up Jetfire and flee, causing Jetfire to give his remaining power to Optimus Prime. The Autobots are now in a race to find the Star Harvester before the Decepticons do. While searching, we see the Autobots defeat Grindor and Devastator. Then the Fallen reveals himself and has a final fight with Prime, where Prime wins, destroying the Fallen and the Star Harvester, ending the Autobot campaign. Then the Decepticon campaign also starts in Shanghai, just like the Autobot one. This time, Sideways hands an Allspark fragment to Demolisher, then fights Bumblebee, defeating him but not able to kill him. Then, on the US West Coast, the Decepticons attempt to get a different piece of the Allspark. First trying to get it from Michaela Baines, and then ultimately getting one from Director Galloway. The Decepticons then use the Allspark fragment to revive Megatron. Then they head to the East Coast, where Megatron attacks a human base and absorbs a power core they had to regain some of his strength, defeating Ironhide in the process. Megatron meets with the Fallen and sends out Starscream to fight Prime, who he defeats, causing Sam Witwicky to flee to Egypt. Megatron, convinced that means that's where the Star Harvester is. The Decepticons then all head to Egypt, Dead End destroying human forces, Megatron destroying the Axum Gun, a powerful weapon the humans could use against the Decepticons. The Star Harvester is finally found. Then Megatron begins to feel used by the Fallen, causing Megatron to betray and kill the Fallen, and allows Optimus to destroy the Sun Harvester. This campaign ends with Megatron fleeing to the Nemesis, the Decepticon ship, and begin to create a new army. This game is a top-down arcade-style shooter, where you cannot transform. Super fucking lame. Most stages in robot mode, a few in vehicle mode, pretty disappointing. This game also has a survival mode where you just try to see how long you can survive. You can play as Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Ironhide, Sideswipe, and Ratchet for the Autobots, then Megatron, Starscream, Sideways, Dead, and Grindor for the Decepticons, with the Fallen, Devastator, Soundwave, Jetfire, and Demolisher all as non-playable Transformers you can see in the game. This game has a whopping 2.8 out of 10 by IGN. Absolutely massive. Yikes. That's what you get when you can't transform in a Transformers game. Now, finally, for this movie's tie-in games, the one I actually played as a kid, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, Autobots, Decepticons. Released exclusively on the DS, developed by Vicarious Visions, published by Activision. The Autobot version starts off with a new Autobot recruit crash landing on Earth and going through the tutorial with Optimus Prime, then being sent to Europe where he carries out multiple missions and defeats the Decepticon Grindor. Then sent to Asia where he tracks and kills Sideways. The Decepticons you beat all mention something about the Fallen. Then the new recruit is sent to America where they intercept a signal and meet Jetfire, who tells the recruit all about the Fallen and their plan to use the Star Harvester, which the recruit relays to the rest of the Autobots, and then learns that Megatron has been revived. The Autobots then head to Egypt, where Optimus defeats the Fallen, and the recruit stops Megatron from activating the Star Harvester by defeating him in battle, ending the story for the Autobot version. Then the Decepticon version starts with a new Decepticon recruit going through the tutorial with Starscream, and then is sent to Europe where they carry out missions including destroying Bumblebee. Then the recruit returns to the Decepticon base and sees the Fallen, who is now in charge of the Decepticons. The recruit is then sent to Asia and retrieves more Allspark fragments, which they use to revive Megatron. Then they go to America and destroy Ironhide and extract information from Jetfire, letting them know where the Star Harvester is. So the Decepticons head to Egypt, retrieve the Matrix of Leadership, allowing them to start the Star Harvester. Then the recruit defeats Optimus Prime, impressing the Fallen, who makes the recruit his new right-hand man, pissing Megatron and Starscream off. And the Decepticons successfully harvest the Sun, giving them enough Energon to create a new army big enough to conquer the known universe. The gameplay for this one is nearly identical to the original DS game, except for one major difference. At the beginning of the game, you decide between 3 different vehicles, which one to scan and be able to transform into, meaning you can't switch between different vehicles. You're stuck with whatever the first one was. I said one major difference, I lied. This game allows you to upgrade your weapons as well, unlocking better and more powerful ones as you go along. Also, this game isn't open world like the last one, having more linear missions-based gameplay, which, while limits your freedom, did allow for more environments and settings to play in. On top of the recruit, this game has the playable Autobots being Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Breakaway, and Sideswipe, and the Decepticons that are playable are Megatron, Starscream, Sideways, and Barricade. Then the other Transformers that appear in the game are the Fallen, Devastator, Soundwave, Grindor, Ironhide, Ratchet, Jetfire, and Scorponok. Then, for the reception, just like the last one, I played this one as a kid, and I'll say I remember it being harder than the original, at least one Ironhide mission specifically, and while I still enjoyed it, not being able to switch between vehicles to transform into really took some of its charm away for me. so I didn't enjoy it as much. But that ends the 2000s era of games. I would say mostly known for just the movie tie-in games more than anything else, with some fun games sprinkled in there as well. Then, to kick off 2010, we got another set of Transformers games that are supposedly the same ones, just on different systems, but those systems then cause the games to be very different from each other. This one not being a movie tie-in, this one being for Transformers War for Cybertron. First, we got the console version, released June 17th, 2010, to the PS3, Xbox 360, and PC. Developed by High Moon Studios and published by Activision. This game once again has a split story, Autobot story or Decepticon story. But this time, it's not alternate stories, it's two different parts of the same story, with the Decepticon story coming first chronologically, but you can play either story first. So since it takes place first, I'll finally say the Decepticon storyline first. The Decepticon story starts with Megatron thinking Cybertron needs a caste system. Brother, chill. And he's also researching Dark Energon. Megatron then learns of a Dark Energon factory, which is guarded by a neutral army led by Starscream. So Megatron attacks the factory with other Decepticons, and when cornered, Starscream says he's the only one who can make more Dark Energon and promises to help Megatron. Megatron reluctantly agrees. This ordeal causes the Decepticon Jetfire to lose faith in Megatron and decides to warn Zeta Prime of what the Decepticons are doing. Megatron and the Decepticons then activate the ancient Energon Bridge, now producing Dark Energon, and begin an assault on the rest of Cybertron, mainly the Autobots' capital city. Megatron looks for the Omega Key to get to the core, but learns Zeta Prime has taken it to protect it. But Megatron fights and beats him, punching a hole in Zeta's chest and takes the key. But Zeta says the key only wakes up the real Omega Key. We then see a giant ship start to take off. We then see Megatron searching for the real Omega Key, but are then attacked by Omega Supreme, causing them to have to hide and sneak their way to Autobot turrets to start to fight back against the giant Autobot, causing him to crash land, where the Decepticons decide to rush toward him to finish him off. Omega Supreme then turns into robot mode, but is corrupted by Dark Energon caused by Megatron. This then allows the Decepticons to go to the core and corrupt it with Dark Energon, causing the planet to come under Decepticon rule. The Autobot story then starts off with a messenger Autobot named Bumblebee telling a soldier named Optimus that Zeta Prime is dead, causing Optimus to take on the role of leader of the Autobots. So the Autobots then start an attack on the Decepticons. Optimus then gets a message from Zeta saying he's not dead and that he's being held captive. So Optimus gathers the Autobot forces to rescue their commander. Optimus has the Autobots get purposely captured, then stage a breakout from within, where after fighting through many Decepticons, they reach Zeta Prime, who says he's already dead and then collapses. Optimus then goes to the High Council and is named a Prime, officially becoming Optimus Prime. The new Prime then takes the Autobots to the planet's core, where it's being corrupted by Dark Energon. The Autobots fight their way to the core, but the core, who speaks to Optimus, says in order for them to repair themselves, they'll have to shut down for millions of years, meaning everyone will have to evacuate. But before it shuts off, it gives Prime the Matrix of Leadership. Optimus orders an evacuation of the planet, but Megatron in a space station begins shooting them down. So the Autobots go off to destroy the spaceship, which they realize is a Transformer itself, Trypticon. So they force it to turn into its robot mode, then shoot off its thrusters, causing it to crash back on Cybertron. The Autobots then decide to finish him off and fly down to do so. They search the wreckage only to find an alive and pissed Trypticon. The Autobots eventually manage to kill Trypticon, and then the main team Optimus Prime had worked to get together into the Ark to escape, and says they will work to have Cybertron's legacy live on. The game is a third-person shooter, allowing you to play as many different Transformers through the campaign, but there are 4 classes of Autobots you play as: Leader, Scout, Soldier, and Scientist, with robot mode being where you really fight and are able to collect different weapons, and then vehicle mode, letting you move around faster. This game has an insane list of playable Transformers. The Autobots are Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Ratchet, Ironhide, Sideswipe, Jetfire, Silverbolt, Air Raid, Warpath, RC, Zeta Prime, Jazz, and Scattershot. Then the Decepticons have Megatron, Barricade, Starscream, Soundwave, Thundercracker, Skywarp, Breakdown, Brawl, Slipstream, Shockwave, Demolisher, Onslaught, and Dead End. I don't think all are playable in the campaign, and some might just be in the multiplayer mode. Other Transformers that appear but aren't playable are Omega Supreme, Trypticon, Rumble, Frenzy, and Laserbeak. And interesting note, Johnny Young Bosch voices Bumblebee, a fan favorite Power Ranger, definitely up there for me. This game was very well received, with IGN giving it a 9 out of 10, praising its presentation and classy fan service, but did criticize it for repetitive visuals. But most other sites have the game sitting in the 70s out of 100. Then, about a week later, on June 22nd, 2010, we got the Wii version of this game with a different title named Transformers Cybertron Adventures, developed by Next Level Games and published by Activision. Like I said, this version is the Wii version of War for Cybertron, but made by a different developer, causing some notable differences, starting with the story, with the Autobot and Decepticon campaigns taking place at the same time, and not one after the other like the other version. This one's Autobot campaign starts off with Trypticon raining down fire from space, and Optimus Prime commanding the Autobots to carry out search and rescue missions, with Sideswipe saving Ratchet after he had an encounter with Megatron. Then, Bumblebee and Ironhide go on a recon mission to a data center to steal information on Trypticon, and they get the information, but are then attacked by Soundwave and Megatron and get captured. Ironhide then leads an Autobot prison escape, and during the escape finds Bumblebee, who got scanned by the Decepticons, but still frees him, and the two get out and are freed with the help of Air Raid, giving them air support. Air Raid then goes on a mission of his own and shuts down an Energon bridge that was powering Trypticon. Bumblebee is then tasked with scouting forward the path of where the Autobots are going to be evacuating, where he destroys multiple Decepticon forces. Then, when the Autobots are attacked, you play as Air Raid to protect the Autobots from the ambush. Then, Trypticon is back online, so Jetfire goes to destroy all the satellite relays and depowers the Decepticon, once again causing him to crash land on the surface, with the game ending with Optimus Prime taking down Trypticon in robot form, but knowing that the war is far from over. Then, the Decepticon campaign starts during the Trypticon attacks, just like the Autobot campaign, and you play as Megatron and take on Ratchet, beating him. We then see Starscream patrolling, protecting Trypticon, but then gets distracted fighting Jetfire and leaves his post, angering Megatron, who commands him to return to his post. Soundwave and Barricade are then sent to a data center that has been infiltrated by Bumblebee and Ironhide. They eventually force the Autobots into the line of Megatron's fire, capturing the Autobots. Then, Skywarp leads an assault to funnel the Autobots into the city, which he successfully does. The Decepticons then go to the energy core that was powering Trypticon that was destroyed by the Autobots and repair it to get Trypticon back online. Then the Autobots begin escaping on their ships. Different Decepticons begin putting homing beacons on them, but then the Autobots have weakened Trypticon, and Decepticons go to defend them once again, with Megatron being inside Trypticon, taking down Autobots to try and protect him, but it's not enough, as Trypticon begins to crash. So Megatron scans Trypticon's information, specifically on Dark Energon. Megatron escapes with the information, and Trypticon explodes, ending the Decepticon campaign. This game is a rail shooter, where usually you are located in one cover point and have to clear out all the enemies, then move on. Sometimes there are vehicle sections, which is just having to move from one point to another. The playable Transformers in this one are Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Sideswipe, Air Raid, Ironhide, and Jetfire for the Autobots, and then Megatron, Starscream, Soundwave, Skywarp, Barricade, and Thundercracker for the Decepticons, with Ratchet and Trypticon making unplayable appearances. Unlike its counterpart, this game was received mostly negative reviews, with IGN giving it a 3.5 out of 10, with Peter Cullen's performance as Optimus Prime being called the only good thing in the game. Then, the last piece of this game, which also released on June 22nd, 2010, was once again titled Transformers War for Cybertron, this time the Autobots and Decepticons version, developed by Vicarious Visions and published by Activision, released exclusively to the Nintendo DS. This game's story is more like the first one we talked about in this set, where the Decepticon storyline takes place chronologically before the Autobot campaign, meaning it's very different from the other Transformer DS games, where the two storylines are actually the same story instead of two alternate timelines. But anyways, the story starts off with the Decepticons attacking an Autobot training facility and retrieve information on the Trypticon space station, a station that is producing Dark Energon, guarded by a group of Transformers led by Starscream. Megatron leads the Decepticons to take the base and its Dark Energon facility, and Starscream begs and is allowed to join the Decepticons. So the Decepticons start to experiment using the Dark Energon and attack Autobots using it, but begin to run out. So, to be able to make more, they take a space bridge that was transporting Energon to the Trypticon space station. But the Autobots severed the link to the planet's core, using something called the Omega Key. So Megatron commands a Decepticon task force to find this key. The Decepticons eventually find the key, which is in possession of Autobot leader Zeta Prime. So the Decepticons defeat and imprison Zeta and take the key. Zeta reveals that it isn't the key, but summons the real key, a giant Autobot named Omega Supreme. So the Decepticons take on Omega Supreme and defeat him, granting him access to the planet's core, which they infect with Dark Energon, causing Megatron to proclaim victory. Then, the Autobot campaign starts with the Autobots receiving a distress call from Zeta Prime that cuts off, causing Optimus Prime to take charge of the Autobots and has the Autobots retake the capital city of Cybertron. They then hear from Zeta, where he reveals where he's being held captive. Optimus leads a rescue mission, which is successful as they find Zeta Prime, only to learn he's been mortally wounded. So Optimus takes his body back to the High Council, who makes Optimus the new Prime, and tasks him with saving the planet's core that has been infected with Dark Energon. Optimus gets Grimlock and Swoop to help aid the Autobots temporarily, but Swoop gets captured and experimented on with Dark Energon by Decepticons, causing him to go crazy. But Optimus and Grimlock are able to save and cure Swoop, causing Grimlock and Swoop to decide to keep helping the Autobots. Optimus then leads the Autobots to destroy the Dark Energon corruptors that are damaging the Cybertron's core, which they manage to do. But the core, which is alive, says to properly heal, it will have to reboot itself, and that the Transformers will have to evacuate and be gone for thousands of years. Before the Autobots leave, the core gives them the Matrix of Leadership. The Autobots then have to take on Trypticon, which is taking out Autobot evacuation ships, leaving the planet. So the Autobots destroy Trypticon from the inside, causing it to fall to the surface, but then goes robot mode, which Optimus Prime manages to destroy. Then the Autobots continue their evacuation until all Autobots are off the planet. The missions in this game let you pick 2 Transformers to use for the level, which you can switch between to take out all the enemies in a given area, with 3 different types of Transformers: Heavy, Light, and Air. With Air being ones that can fly, Heavy are able to destroy certain things other Transformers can't, and Light having spaces only they can fit into. There's also 3 different weapon types: Plasma and Laser, which are the ranged weapons, and Solid, which are the melee weapons. There's also a level system in this game that allows you to upgrade different characteristics for Transformers: Endurance, Strength, and Regeneration. The playable Autobots in this game are Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Ironhide, Ratchet, Cliffjumper, Warpath, Ultra Magnus, Sideswipe, Hotshot, Jetfire, Air Raid, Silverbolt, Jazz, Grimlock, and Swoop. Then, playable Decepticons are Megatron, Starscream, Barricade, Soundwave, Brawl, Thundercracker, Skywarp, Durgy, Ramjet, Cyclonus, Motormaster, Breakdown, Dragstrip, Shockwave, and Onslaught. Then, unplayable Transformers being Cup, Zeta Prime, Omega Supreme, Laserbeak, and Trypticon. This game seems to be considered okay, IGN giving it a 6.5 out of 10, and Metacritic having it at a 62 out of 100. IGN saying the game had some good concepts, but needed more polish, but still didn't seem like a rush cash grab. Then, later in 2010, on July 23rd, we got a pair of arcade games, both tied into Transformers Animated the Show, one being Transformers Animated The Chase, and the other is Transformer Animated The Shooting, both published and developed by Sega. For Transformers Animated The Chase, this is a Japanese arcade racing game where you play as a Transformer chasing down a Decepticon. When you get him, it just goes on to the next stage, which is the exact same thing, just harder. And then Transformers Animated The Shooting. This is a Transformers rail shooter where you just go around shooting all the Decepticons that appear on screen. What makes these games unique is to play as a character, you have to scan a card to unlock playing as them. These cards are bought on their own in packs, and there were 4 waves of packs. All the Transformers you can play as are Bumblebee, Ironhide, Ratchet, Prowl, RC, Wreck-Gar, Sentinel Prime, Jazz, Blur, Rodimus, Cliffjumper, Grimlock, Snarl, Swoop, Optimus Prime, and Convoy, with a bunch of different variations, versions, skins of these characters within the packs. And so I can't find anything on the reception of these games, maybe just because it's an arcade game, but since there were 4 waves of these card packs, I'm going to assume that it did well enough. Then, for 2011, we once again got another live-action Bayverse Transformers movie when Transformers Dark of the Moon dropped, spurring another spew of Transformer tie-in games. Again, supposedly the same game, console differences make it worth noting out each one individually. Starting off with Transformers Dark of the Moon for the console, released June 14th, 2011. Released on Xbox 360 and PS3, developed by High Moon Studios and published by Activision. This game only has one storyline, instead of 2 separate campaigns for Autobots and Decepticons. That's lame. But you do get to swap back and forth between playing as an Autobot or a Decepticon. Does help it be less lame. The game starts off establishing Decepticons haven't been seen in years, causing some to believe they've fled the planet. But not Optimus Prime, who sends Bumblebee on a mission in South America to look for them and does find some, where Bee destroys their long-range communicators, plants a virus, and with the help of other Autobots, defeats the Decepticons there. The virus allows the Autobots to track down and attack more Decepticons, including Ironhide taking down Mixmaster in Detroit. Sideswipe is captured by Decepticons, so Mirage is sent to Central America to rescue him. Starscream finds Mirage and beats him pretty badly, disabling his weapons and ability to transform, leaving him with just his camouflage ability. Mirage makes his way to an ancient Mayan temple, which was built on old Cybertron tech. Nest sends repairs for Mirage and Bumblebee, so the two make their way through the temple and find a free Sideswipe. The trio finds Starscream, who they fight, but launches a Decepticon ship and flees. Then we switch to the Decepticon side and you play as Soundwave and Laserbeak as they work through a nest base that's in a volcano. They scan the information that they can and trigger an eruption to destroy the base. The Decepticons then learn that weapons are being transported and Starscream is sent to stop the transportation. He fights Air Raid and then later boards Stratosphere, a large Autobot carrying the weapons, takes one for himself and blows up the Autobot. The Decepticons are then trying to thaw out Shockwave when Starscream returns. Starscream tries to impress Megatron by showing him that he took an Autobot weapon that they can use, which pisses Megatron off because he definitely thinks they have trackers in their weapons. And just as Megatron was going to kill Starscream, the Autobots arrive. Megatron was right. And Megatron fights off the initial attack, then starts to head to Shockwave to thaw him out. But then Optimus Prime arrives, who, with the help of some of the cryo technology around, Megatron defeats and throws down into a cryo chamber. Then you switch to playing as Optimus, who awakens in the cryo chamber. He tries to stop Shockwave from being awakened, but it's too late. Optimus manages to defeat Shockwave, but he escapes, leaving him and Megatron still at large. The game then ends with the Decepticons all meeting back up and Megatron sending Shockwave on a mission to retrieve something from Chernobyl and laughing that Prime has no idea what's going on. This game has similar gameplay to the previous movie tie-in game, third-person shooter, able to transform into vehicles, but this one having a stealth mode where you get to be in vehicle mode with guns. Sweet addition, if you ask me. The playable Autobots in this one are Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Ironhide, Ratchet, Mirage, Sideswipe, Breakaway, and Warpath, with Stratosphere and Wheeljack as non-playables. Then the playable Decepticons being Megatron, Starscream, Soundwave, Laserbeak, Shockwave, and Enforcer, with Mixmaster and Driller as unplayable ones. This movie tie-in game is kind of different from the others, as this one actually takes place earlier than the movie does, this kind of acting as a prologue to the movie. This game seems to be received as pretty mediocre, with it sitting in the 50s on Metacritic, reviews seeming to say it's fine, but ultimately falls short. But then on the same date, we got Transformers Dark of the Moon Autobots or Decepticons, released exclusively to the Nintendo DS, developed by Behavior Interactive and published by Activision. We're back to having two different campaigns for the Autobots and Decepticons, just as Primus intended. The Autobots, mainly Bumblebee, discover that the city they're in is crawling with Decepticons. Optimus then informs the Autobots of two attacks: Mixmaster attempting to bring back the Constructicons, and Starscream attacking an industrial park, where Ironhide is tasked with protecting. Then, while investigating a Decepticon's transmission about something called Shockwave, Optimus has a run-in with Soundwave. Mirage then encounters Lockdown at a Nest construction site. Then Optimus has to go protect the Nest base in the Pacific. Then, back with Mirage, Lockdown enters the Nest base and takes down its satellite dishes. Mirage then follows behind and repairs them. Then Ironhide tracks down Lockdown. Then Bumblebee, over on a volcanic island, tracks down and fights Crowbar, but is then jumped by Starscream. And while he fights back, both Decepticons manage to escape. The Autobots then track down Starscream and send Mirage to scout out the mission. The Autobots then learn what Shockwave is. It's a deadly Decepticon assassin. Bumblebee then clears away through the Decepticon base. Optimus then arrives at the base and searches it, finding not only Shockwave, but Megatron too. Optimus then radios the other Autobots that Shockwave and Megatron have escaped. Ironhide then tracks down Megatron and fights him, but Megatron escapes. And that ends the game. Essentially nothing happens of consequence. Cool. Hopefully the Decepticon campaign is better. It starts with Starscream telling the Decepticons of Megatron's orders for a double assault, with Mixmaster leading one and Starscream the other, and Starscream commands Soundwave and Crowbar to cause distractions while they do so. Everyone is very skeptical of Starscream giving out orders. Lockdown is then sent to a Nest base to scan their systems and see if they have any information on Shockwave. After getting the information, Lockdown is then sent to a Nest base in the Pacific, fighting and beating Mirage. Then, at the same base, Crowbar starts destroying the buildings there. Lockdown then goes after their communication arrays as a part of another diversion planned by Starscream. Soundwave then infiltrates the same base and steals the information from it. Crowbar then goes on a rampage to clear a path for Soundwave to leave, having to fight Bumblebee to do so. The Decepticons then go to Siberia, and Crowbar has another run-in with Mirage, who track them down there. The Autobots set jammers out that were messing with the Decepticons' tech, so Soundwave is tasked with destroying the jammers, which he does. The Autobots then begin to overrun the Decepticons, causing Megatron to look for Shockwave to activate. Megatron then has a run with Ironhide, who gets Megatron to flee again, but not before Megatron successfully gets and leaves with Shockwave, ending this game's campaign. This game's gameplay is very similar to the other DS movie tie-ins, one difference being this one incorporated the vehicle mode like the console version did. Then another major difference is that you play as traditional Transformers and there is no player character in this one. Feels a little less personal. This game allows you to play as Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Ironhide, and Mirage for the Autobots, and Megatron, Lockdown, Crowbar, and Soundwave for the Decepticons, with Ratchet and Wheeljack as non-playable Autobots, and Shockwave and Starscream as non-playable Decepticons, which is kind of surprising as Starscream is one of the more common Decepticons to be playable, so it's pretty different to see him not playable here. Nintendo Power gave this game a 30%. Very bad. IGN gave it a 5 out of 10, described it as plain, uneventful, and bland. From that description, 5 out of 10 sounds a little generous. But this isn't the only Nintendo exclusive they got for this movie. As on the same date, we got Transformers Dark of the Moon Stealth Force Edition, released exclusively to the Wii and the 3DS, developed by Behavior Interactive and published by Activision. I'm going to be super brief with the story since it's mostly the same. It's the Autobots and Decepticons fighting back and forth as the Decepticons attempt to retrieve Shockwave. You once again swap back and forth between both Autobots and Decepticons, not having dedicated single storyline campaigns for each faction. The gameplay is insane, in a bad way. You are stuck in vehicle mode and cannot go robot mode. This was an insane decision. Anytime you cannot transform in a Transformer game, it's a bad idea. Let alone not being able to go big-ass robot mode. You chose vehicle mode to be stuck in. It is a racing simulator with guns. There's more boring games out there, but for Transformers, this is underwhelming. This game features the Autobots Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Ironhide, Mirage, Stratosphere, Wheeljack, Ratchet, Sideswipe, Air Raid, Silverbolt, Warpath, and Breakaway, and the Decepticons Megatron, Starscream, Soundwave, Shockwave, Lockdown, and Crowbar. This game has terrible reviews for painfully obvious reasons. Then, finally, on June 28th, 2011, we got the final movie tie-in game for Dark of the Moon, with Transformers Dark of the Moon for mobile, developed and published by EA. I haven't played this game, so I'm relying on the wiki for the story, and just like the other mobile tie-in ones, there is not a lot of information, so I'm doing the best I can. But the game starts with you play as Optimus Prime and investigate weird happenings over at Chernobyl, then defend cargo from being taken by Decepticons. Then, the Ark, a Transformer ship, crashes, and Optimus goes to it, finds Sentinel Prime, and escapes with him. Then you switch to playing as Bumblebee, where you save some cosmonauts, fight Decepticons, and escort Sam to Nest HQ. Then you go back to being Optimus, fight some Decepticons, and then learn that Sentinel Prime is a traitor, and you fight him. Then you go back to Bumblebee in the streets of Chicago and take down a space bridge. Then back to Optimus Prime, where there's a three-way fight between Optimus, Sentinel, and Megatron, with Optimus ultimately emerging victorious, ending the game. This is a top-down third-person game with on-screen buttons that allow you to move, transform, shoot, melee attack, special charge attack, where the stage is mostly you fighting through waves of Decepticons. In vehicle mode, you have the ability to shoot enemies while driving. The three playable Transformers in this game are all Autobots, kind of. Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, and Sentinel Prime. Then Ironhide is in the game but not playable. Then the Decepticons in this game are Megatron, Shockwave, and then Sentinel Prime? Decepticon, I guess, at this point? I don't know. All are boss fights. So IGN gave the game a 6, which is okay, better than average, right? But they said, and I quote, "Sadly though, the mobile version of Dark of the Moon is a disappointment, with repetitive level design that drags out the experience long after it ceases being fun." IGN, what the fuck? That is not a 6. That sounds terrible. What is y'all's scale? But we move on from the movie tie-in games and look forward. Then, to start off 2012, we got Transformers Fall of Cybertron, the sequel to War for Cybertron. This one being released August 21st, 2012. Released to the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and PC. The sequel cutting out the Wii, DS, and 3DS, unfortunately. Developed by High Moon Studios for the console versions and Mercenary Technology for the PC. All published by Activision. In this one, the Autobots are attempting to flee Cybertron upon the Ark, but are then attacked by the Decepticons and their ship, the Nemesis. Megatron and Optimus have a battle on the surface of the Ark, and Megatron shoots a fatal shot at Optimus, which Bumblebee jumps in front of. It then cuts to 6 days earlier. Optimus and the Autobots are defending the Ark from Decepticons on Cybertron. Optimus awakens the giant Autobot Metroplex, helping the Autobots push back the Decepticons and help destroy some of the Decepticons' warp cannons. But while Optimus attempts to destroy one of the cannons himself, he gets captured by the Decepticons. Megatron is about to execute Optimus, but then Metroplex crushes Megatron, killing him. So Starscream assumes command and orders the Decepticons to retreat. The Autobots won the fight, but were then left with no Energon to fuel their ship to leave. Then, another group of Autobots are investigating the disappearance of another unit of Autobots, where during the search, they find a sea of Energon, with the tower shooting a beam into the sky, commanded by Shockwave. It turns out to be a space bridge, with the group of Autobots destroyed after Shockwave flees and they report what happens to Optimus. The Autobots then harvest all the Energon from the tower and begin to transport it back into the Ark, but the transport is attacked. The Autobots fight back, and Starscream orders a retreat, but the Combaticons don't listen. Continue attacking, forming Bruticus, accidentally causing the train to crash. Starscream then arrests the Combaticons for insubordination. Then Soundwave revives Megatron, and after squabbling with Starscream, Megatron retakes command of the Decepticons and orders a new assault on the Autobots. Megatron then finds the body of Trypticon, killed in the last game, but enough is left of his body and his core that allows Megatron to turn Trypticon into the Decepticons' new ship, Nemesis. Wanting to betray Megatron, Starscream talks to an imprisoned Grimlock to help him out, but Grimlock just escapes by tossing Starscream around. Grimlock then looks for his friends, only to find out they've been experimented on by Shockwave, giving them new forms. Shockwave also reveals he's created a new space bridge. Grimlock rescues his teammates and contacts Optimus Prime, then destroys the space bridge and takes off Shockwave's arm in the process. The portal is created, but the tower is still up and gives the Autobots a chance to escape through it. Metroplex sacrifices himself by giving all his Energon to the Ark, so the Autobots take off, but are intercepted by the Nemesis. The Decepticons begin attacking, and the game cuts back to Bumblebee's sacrifice. Megatron and Optimus start fighting again, but before the fight ends, they go through the portal, leaving Cybertron behind, and the game ends. The gameplay is similar to War for Cybertron, a first-person shooter where you can play in both robot and vehicle mode. This game does have a different health system, where your health can regenerate. Every Transformer in this game has their own special ability, allowing for every Transformer to have a unique feel. The survival mode that was in the first game is also in this one, where you fight through waves of enemies to see how long you can last. This game has an insane number of playable Transformers, some only in the survival mode, but the Transformers are the Autobots Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Ratchet, Ironhide, Cliffjumper, Jazz, Jetfire, Warpath, Perceptor, Sideswipe, Air Raid, Silverbolt, Zeta Prime, Scattershot, Wheeljack, Hound, and Ultra Magnus, with the Dinobots Grimlock, Swoop, Slug, and Snarl. Then for the Decepticons, there's Megatron, Starscream, Shockwave, Soundwave, Bruticus, which is Brawl, Swindle, Onslaught, Vortex, and Blastoff, then also Dragstrip. Quake, Thundercracker, Skywarp, Breakdown, Dead End, Demolisher, and then the Insecticons, Sharpshot, Kickback, and Hardshell. All of those playable. Then, unplayable Autobots being Metroplex and Sludge. Decepticons being Rumble, Frenzy, and Trypticon. Damn, that is a lot of Transformers. And then also, on August 8th, 2016, this game got a new gen port for the PS4 and Xbox One developed by Funlabs. This game got great reviews, with the 360 version getting an 81.4% on Game Rankings, with G4 TV's Matt Miller calling the game a cinematic shooter that stands on the strength of its design and gameplay. But that's not all we got in 2012, as on October 30th, we also got Transformers Prime, the game, released to the Nintendo DS, 3DS, Wii, and Wii U. All being Nintendo exclusive, making up for not getting anything from Fall of Cybertron. This one being developed by Ultron and Now Productions, published by Activision. This story is only as the Autobots. I know, disappointing. The Decepticons have discovered an asteroid of dark energon and have brought their ship into Earth's atmosphere, causing the Autobots to attempt to infiltrate it. Optimus Prime destroys the ship's tethers to the asteroid, then fights Megatron. But during the fight, the asteroid gets destroyed, causing the Autobots to fall back to Earth. and none of them can fly. But Megatron sends Decepticons down to Earth to ensure they are dead. Then the Autobots that stayed on Earth, mainly Ratchet, go out in search of the fallen Autobots. Then we see Arcee wake up after the fall and have a run-in with Arachnid, who kidnapped a human, Jack. But Arcee manages to rescue the human. Then we see another human, Miko, find Bulkhead. But then Starscream attacks, but Bulkhead comes to in time and protect the both of them from his initial attacks. But eventually, Miko gets captured as Starscream flees. Game then cuts to Bumblebee, who wakes up a prisoner in a Decepticon Dark Energon mine. B is found by a human, Raph, but during their escape together, Raph is captured too. Man, these kids have gotta stay away. Then we see Ratchet find Optimus near a piece of the meteor, along with Thunderwing, a disciple of Unicron. Optimus wake up and fights Thunderwing, but then the Decepticons arrive, causing Ratchet and Optimus to have to flee. Optimus gets away, but the Decepticons capture Ratchet and Thunderwing. Megatron forces Thunderwing to join his side. Ratchet to fix Thunderwing and sets out to find Cybertronian parts to restore Thunderwing even more. The Autobots then focus on saving the captured humans. They have some run-in with Decepticons, searching for parts for Thunderwing, which they manage to get their hands on, and take out Optimus by trapping him under rocks. Then, Bulkhead infiltrates a grounded Nemesis and manages to free Ratchet and the captured humans. Then, Ratchet fights and beats Soundwave, then calls in other Autobots to come and help, which they do. During all this chaos and fighting, the Decepticons fully restore Thunderwing, who betrays the Decepticons, allowing the Autobots to escape the Nemesis while Thunderwing damages said ship. The Autobots then regroup and track down Thunderwing to a Dark Energon volcano, but are then attacked by Megatron. But when the Autobots needed him most, Optimus arrived and took on Megatron, but Thunderwing wants to destroy the Matrix of Leadership, which Optimus possesses. So, on his way to do so, Thunderwing seemingly kills Megatron. Optimus, with the help of the other Autobots, is able to defeat Thunderwing and push him into a pit of lava. The game ends with an Optimus monologue saying he'll continue to protect Earth. This is a third-person game mostly based on melee combat, but does have some shooting and vehicle sections. There's also 3 multiplayer modes. Brawl, this is just a last man standing mode between players. Energon match, a points-based match with unlimited lives where you get points for killing and lose points for dying. And finally, Emblem battle, where Transformers fight over an emblem. There you get points for holding it. Most points when the time is up wins. This game features the Autobots Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Arcee, Bulkhead, and Ratchet, the Decepticons Megatron, Starscream, Soundwave, Knockout, Dreadwing, and Arachnid, and then finally the Transformer Thunderwing. The game ties into the second season of the show, but due to continuity errors, like where Starscream is in his allegiance, makes this game appear to be in a separate timeline. This game got mostly positive reviews, a 7.8 on IGN, people praising the gameplay and multiplayer sections, but criticized its simple campaign. Then, for 2013, all we got was Transformers Human Alliance. And all I could find was that it was released in late 2013, probably because it is a arcade game, developed and published by Sega. This game is based in the same world as the live-action movies, between the second and third one. Bumblebee is escorting 2 humans, a civilian named Jake, who has some special device, and Vanessa, a Nest agent, when they get attacked by Starscream and other Decepticons. Bumblebee arms the humans, and the 3 of them fight back to defend themselves. During the fight, the Decepticons get the device from Jake, and they flee. Then, for the next stage of the game, the player has a choice of which one to play: England Central City or Northern African Desert. In England, they're investigating an earthquake when they are attacked by Decepticons. Vanessa, Jake, and this time Sideswipe fight back the attack. Brawler, the Decepticon leading the attack, beats Sideswipe, but is then beaten by the humans. Then, if you went for the Northern African option, you are also investigating earthquakes. Here, Vanessa and Jake fight alongside Optimus Prime against Shockwave and King Scorponok. The group then recovers the device from earlier, which was the cause of the earthquakes. Then, we cut to the US West Coast with the Decepticons staging a massive attack, which we again see our human characters fight against alongside with different Autobots. During the fight, Optimus gets separated after he hunts down Megatron and signals for the others to follow after him. The rest of the group crashes down in Canada after following Optimus' signal, but instead of Prime, they find Megatron, who gloats over killing Prime and his Energon Tower, and starts to chase after Jake and Vanessa. Megatron gets through B, but before he can kill the humans, Optimus, not dead, Megatron lied, saves them and starts fighting with Megatron one more time. With the help of the humans, Prime is about to finish off Megatron when an earthquake happens. It's the Energon Tower. Sideswipe and Nest troops arrive to help, and everyone focuses on taking out the Energon Tower, which they do. But this allows Megatron a window to escape. Game ends with Optimus Prime promising to continue to help protect Earth. So many games end like this in this franchise. This is your typical arcade rail shooter. It's 2-player where one player can play as Vanessa and the other is Jake. Works like any other rail shooter where all the movement is out of your control and you just point and shoot. Also get a special bonus for both players targeting the same spot to do more damage. There was a special motion simulator version of this game released in 2015. This game is the only Transformers game so far that you don't play as a Transformer. Let's hope it remains that way. The Transformers that do appear are Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, and Sideswipe as the only Autobots, then Megatron, Starscream, Brawler, Shockwave, Soundwave, Laserbeak, Scorponok King, and Skywarp for the Decepticons. Since it was an arcade game, it doesn't have normal reviews for me to use to gauge the reception of the game. But since 2 years after its release, it got a special version and does get a sequel, I can safely assume this game performed well in arcades. Then, for 2014, we got 3 games, 2 of them being pretty much the same, one being the console, the other the mobile version of this. So starting off the year, we got Transformers Rise of the Darkspark games, 2 of them being pretty much this, released on the PlayStation 3 and 4, Xbox 360 and 1, Wii U, and PC. This one is developed by Edge of Reality, published by Activision, except for in Japan where it was published by Square Enix. This seems to be a multiversal game and acts as a third installment in the War for and Fall of Cybertron games, and then a sequel, spin-off, crossover thing for the movie tie-in video games. The game starts off on Earth in the movie continuity. The Autobots find a relic called the Darkspark, which is the evil version of the Matrix of Leadership, letting the user bend the universe and people to its will. They were also fighting around with Decepticons, mainly Lockdown, during this time, and Lockdown gets the Darkspark and gets away. Then the game jumps over to the Cybertron continuity. Megatron sends Decepticons back down to Cybertron to retrieve the Darkspark. First, Shockwave defeats and gains control of the Insecticons, then they find the Darkspark. But before they can grab it, a couple of Autobots come in, take it, and run off. The Autobots fight off the Insecticons and attempt to leave on train, but the Decepticons manage to blow it up. Shockwave and Sharpshot defeat Ironhide and get the Darkspark, and then they start to flee. The Decepticons fight back against multiple Autobot attacks, getting the Darkspark all the way to their capital, and are attacked once again, but repel the attack and take Cliffjumper hostage. Optimus and Jazz attempt to free Cliffjumper, but end up captured themselves. Then, Jetfire goes to the remains of Trypticon and uses its giant laser to free the captured Autobots. Then, we get a fight between Megatron and Optimus Prime, with Megatron using the Darkspark to revive dead Autobots into mindless drones. But Optimus manages to defeat Megatron, and he uses the Matrix of Leadership to launch the Darkspark into space. But this hurts himself and Megatron. Megatron gets carried away, and Optimus calls for the rest of the Autobots, telling them to continue with their plans to fly off in the Ark. We then cut back to the film continuity with the Autobots tracking down Lockdown, but then Drift is captured, and while freed by B, the two are about to be overwhelmed by Decepticons, but get saved by Grimlock. But Lockdown once again gets away. The Autobots find Lockdown in an old military bunker attempting to build a time bridge, but the Autobots destroy it, and then Drift and Optimus separate the Darkspark from Lockdown and throw it into the time bridge right before it explodes. Then Lockdown runs away, vowing they'll see each other again. The game ends with Gen 1 Optimus Prime seeing the Darkspark fall from the sky. This game is another third-person shooter like the other games in the series, can be robot mode or vehicle mode, and has the regen health system, also with weapon upgrades and special perks for different Transformers. Then a multiplayer mode called Escalation, with 4 players defending against waves of enemies with upgradable defenses. This game has Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Ironhide, Drift, Grimlock, Jazz, Jetfire, Sideswipe, Cliffjumper, Hound, Ratchet, Air Raid, Silverbolt, Scattershot, Snarl, Perceptor, Warpath, Zeta Prime, Slug, Swoop, and Ultra Magnus for the Autobots. Also, Slug is actually the Autobot Slag, but apparently slag is a derogatory term in certain places, so it was changed. Then, Lockdown, Stinger, Megatron, Starscream, Shockwave, Soundwave, Swindle, Brawl, Onslaught, Blastoff, Vortex, Bruticus, Kickback, Sharpshot, Hardshell, Quake, Breakdown, Dead End, Dragstrip, Demolisher, Thundercracker, and Skywarp for the Decepticons, all of these Transformers playable. Then for non-playables, there's also the Decepticons Laserbeak, Rumble, and Leaper. This game does let you play back and forth between Autobots and Decepticons in the story, but most playable Transformers come from the multiplayer mode. This is the last game to tie into the movies and the final game in the War for Cybertron games, which doesn't have a trilogy name. I feel like given all these other games take place on Earth, it should probably just be called the Cybertron Trilogy. This game seems to have a not so good reception, with each version not being able to crack 50 out of 100 on Metacritic, with IGN giving it a bad 4 out of 10, saying it was bland and had a complex story. Version of this, when we got... So starting off the year, we got Transformers Rise of the Dark Spark, released August 24th, 2014. Released Xbox 360 and One, Wii U. This one is developed by Edge of Reality, published by Activision, except for in Japan, where it was published by Square Enix. This seems to be a multiversal game and acts as a third installment in the War for and Fall of Cybertron games, and then a sequel silver thing for the movie tie-ins. The game starts off on Earth in the movie continuity. The Autobots find a relic called the Dark Spark, which is the universe and people to its will. They were also fighting around with Decepticons, mainly Lockdown, during this, and Lockdown gets the Dark Spark and gets away. Then the game jumps over to the Cybertron continuity. Megatron sends Decepticons back down to Cybertron to retrieve the Spark. First Shockwave to Dark Spark, but before the Autobots fight off the Insecticons and attempt to leave on train, but the Decepticons manage to blow it up. Shockwave and Sharpshot defeat Ironhide and get the Dark Spark, and then they start to flee. The Decepticons fight back against multiple Autobot attacks, getting the Dark Spark all the way to their capital, and are attacked once again, but repel the attack and take Cliffjumper hostage. Optimus and Jazz attempt to free Cliffjumper, but end up captured themselves. Then Jetfire goes to the remains of Trypticon and uses its giant laser to free the captured Autobots. Then finally, for 2014, we got a little bit of a fun one with Angry Birds Transformers, released on iOS and Android on October 15th, 2014. Developed by Rovio and Exient, published by Rovio. This is just a reskin Angry Birds, with the Angry Birds dressed as different Transformers, where the Autobirds and Deceptihogs fight over the Egg Spark, with the Autobirds taking the appearance of Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Ironhide, Ratchet, Ultra Magnus, Nemesis Prime, Blur, Optimus Maximus, Rodimus, Cliffjumper, Cosmos, Heatwave, Sentinel Prime, Hound, Jazz, Ricochet, Blaster, Sideswipe, Red Alert, Sunstreaker, Mirage, Grimlock, Volcanus, RC, Arachnid, Chromia, Novastar, Moonracer, Greenlight, Bluestreak, Prowl, Smokescreen, Beachcomber, Wingblade, Alita 1, Drift, Wheeljack, Grapple, Warpath, Omega Supreme, Nautica, Stonegram, Alpha Trion, Superion, Cup, and Nightbird. Then the Decepticons look like Megatron, Bludgeon, Brawl, Shockwave, Soundwave, Sound Blaster, Breakdown, Lockdown, Dead End, Barricade, Galvatron, Scorponok, Motormaster, Dragstrip, Minosaur, Thundercracker, Acid Storm, Starscream, Skywarp, Sunstorm, Devastator, Cyclonus, Durgy, Ramjet, Thrust, Ion Storm, Nova Storm, Trypticon, Slipstream, Flame War, and Dreadlock, which is Drift, but as a Decepticon, so I'm going to count them separately. There's a huge cast of characters in this game. This game is still on the Play Store 10 years later and has an average rating of 4.6 stars. Pretty good rating. Then for 2015, the lone game we got was Transformers Devastation. Released October 6th, 2015. Released to the PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and PC. Developed by Platinum Games and published by Activision. In New York, Insecticons start to attack, causing the Autobots to respond. When they get there, they have to fight Megatron and Devastator. It turns out the attacks are caused by the Proudstar, an old crashed Autobot ship, which Megatron is now controlling and plans to use it to help terraform Earth into a new Cybertron. Optimus says the Proudstar was planned to be used to terraform an uninhabited planet and contains records of Cybertron thought lost to the war. The Autobots fight their way through the ship, fighting Soundwave to get to the heart of the ship, but the core of the ship ejects. The Autobots chase down the core, but while fighting Blitzwing, Starscream gets the core and runs off, just to crash. The Autobots race Motormaster to the core, but it's broken and could explode. The Autobots fight Minosaur for it, but Minosaur throws it to Megatron, who flies off to Cybertron for it to be repaired. Autobots go through a space bridge to follow him, but get slowed down by more Decepticons. Then the Autobots learn that Unicron corrupted the old crew of the Proudstar, and they began terraforming inhabited planets before they crashed on Earth. But the Autobots get back on the Proudstar, attempting to disable the core, but instead rupture it, meaning the only way to stop the terraforming of Earth is the Ferrotaxis, a supercomputer that Megatron has. The Autobots fight their way through the ship, causing Megatron to attempt to flee, but the Autobots track him down and fight him over the computer. The Autobots defeat Megatron, but he launches the computer into the sky to the Insecticons, so Optimus goes after it, chased by Megatron. Optimus gets his hands on the computer, but isn't able to shut it down, forcing him to destroy it, stopping any terraforming or core explosion. The game ends with Optimus declaring Earth his people's new home and vows to protect it. I think I've heard this one before. Optimus then plans the Optimus Maximus project. And then in the post-credits, we see the Proudstar captain, Nova Prime, begin to wake up. This game has similar elements to other Transformers games, having the ability to transform melee and range attacks, but this game is more fast-paced in combat, having a dodge mechanic that slows down time, allowing you to unleash a strong counterattack, including vehicle mode attacks. The only playable Transformers in this game are the Autobots, Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Wheeljack, Sideswipe, and Grimlock, with Defensor and Superion also being in the game but not playable. There's no playable Decepticons, but Megatron, Soundwave, Starscream, Blitzwing, Thundercracker, Skywarp, Shockwave, Frenzy, Rumble, Laserbeak, Buzzsaw, Ravage, Devastator, who consist of Scrapper, Scavenger, Mixmaster, Longhaul, Bonecrusher, and Hook, and then Menasor, who consists of Motormaster, Breakdown, Offroad, Deaden, and Dragstrip. Then the Insecticons, Kickback, Scrapnel, and Bombshell. Then the game also features Nova Prime, Jaxus, and Kranix, all non-playable. This game has pretty good reviews, sitting in the 70s on Metacritic across the different platforms, with a GameSpot critic saying the game captures the Transformers franchise spirit and presents it anew. And then 2016 was a pretty light year, with only Transformers Earth Wars being fully released, being released June 2nd, 2016 to iOS and Android, developed by Space Ape Games and published by Backflip Studios. This game is just a Clash of Clans ripoff, just with Transformers characters. And I am finally tapping out on naming all the Transformers in the game. Here's just the list the wiki has. It is everyone. Anyone I've ever named is in this game, plus others I haven't. This game is still up on the Play Store with over 10 million downloads and has a 4.6 star rating out of 5. But also in 2016, on August 5th, we got a closed beta for a game called Transformers Online. I couldn't find any systems for this game, but since it was just a closed beta, I'm just going to assume it was PC. It was developed by Tencent Games and published by Hasbro, although it was never fully published. This was just an Overwatch reskin that seemed to never really be able to take off, going through multiple testings but never fully released, being fully shut down on February 13th, 2020. The game did feature Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Ratchet, Wheeljack, Hot Rod, Bluestreak, Jazz, Sunstreaker, Brawn, Hound, Crosshairs, Mirage, Arcee, and Grimlock for the Autobots, and then Megatron, Swindle, Deaden, Soundwave, Brawl, Dragstrip, Blackout, and Barricade for the Decepticons. A game that almost was, but sadly, never was. Then, finally for the 2010s, we have Transformers Forged to Fight, released on iOS and Android, developed and published by Kabam. In this game, you play as a human commander helping set up base for the Autobots who crash land on a planet on their way to Cybertron and fight off Decepticons and corrupted Autobots. You look for reinforcements, set up and manage a base and its defenses, and explore the planet. Then you can fight with the Transformers you find against other Transformers in a 2D arcade-style combat. There are 6 different classes for the Transformers, affecting how they play: Scout, Tech, Demolition, Tacticians, Brawlers, and Warriors. The Autobots in this game are Optimus Prime, Ratchet, Bumblebee, Ironhide, Sideswipe, Mirage, Windblade, Arcee, Ultramagnus, Prowl, Grimlock, Blaster, Rewind, Steeljaw, Jazz, Wheeljack, Jetfire, Cliffjumper, Rodimus Prime, Sunstreaker, Chromia, Drift, and Hound. And the Decepticons are Starscream, Soundwave, Shockwave, Motormaster, Bludgeon, Ravage, Laserbeak, Ramjet, Galvatron, Kickback, Tantrum, Thundercracker, Cyclonus, The Fallen, Nemesis Prime, Necatronus, Durgy, Skywarp, Slipstream, Sound Blaster, Howlback, Buzzsaw, Dead End, Grinder, Barricade, Bonecrusher, and Mixmaster. Then there's also a couple of Predacons and Maximals: Optimus Primal, Rhinox, Dinobot, and Cheetor for the Maximals, and then Waspinator and Scorponok for the Predacons. The game was originally shut down January 13th, 2023, but was brought back on Netflix May 10th, 2023. So down for such a short time, maybe the quickest comeback ever. Now, while Netflix brought it back, you can still see it on the Play Store, where it says it has over 1 million downloads and has a 4.4 star rating out of 5. That ends the 2010s era of Transformers game, and due to a late push at the end, I might just classify this one as the mobile game era for Transformers. It wasn't all that dominated it, but it is what was more prevalent in it than in previous decades. Now, we finally enter the 2020s when we get Transformers Battlegrounds, released October 23rd, 2020. The exact day, I turned 18. This was released to the Switch, PS4, Xbox One, PC, as well as Google Stadia. Remember that? I bought it. Oops. But this is 5 years since the last console Transformers game. It's only been mobile games since then. But this was developed by Coatsink and published by Outright Games and then Bandai Namco Entertainment for Europe. In this game, Bumblebee saves a human during a Decepticon attack, then takes on more Decepticons and rescues Grimlock. We then cut to Arcee and Wheeljack, who save Windblade and fight and defeat Shockwave. Then they regroup with Bumblebee and Grimlock. The Autobots then find the Allspark, but it turns out they led Megatron to it as well. Then Optimus arrives too and argues with Megatron, but Megatron leaves with the Allspark as Optimus has to protect his fellow Autobots from some Decepticons. The Autobots follow Megatron to a Decepticon base, only for him to travel to Cybertron through a space bridge with the Allspark. And the other Decepticons destroy the space bridge, causing the Autobots to not follow. But then, the human Bee saved earlier drops a flyer showing that in a nearby city there's an old space bridge at a museum. The team goes to the new space bridge, defeats some Decepticons, and reactivates the bridge. The Autobots go through the bridge and fight through Decepticons as they track down Megatron, leading to a final fight between Optimus Prime and Megatron. Ultimately, Prime comes out victorious, ending the game. The gameplay for this one is tactic-based, where you control different Autobots and plan out their movements and attacks in turn-based combat. Personally, this reminds me a lot of Mario Rabbids, a game I really liked. The Autobots in this game are Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Arcee, Wheeljack, Grimlock, and Windblade, with the Decepticons being Megatron, Shockwave, Soundwave, Starscream, Shadow Striker, Hyperdrive, Off-Road, Dead End, Battletrap, Blackjack, Road Trap, Slipstream, Acid Storm, Thundercracker, Nova Storm, Thrust, Ramjet, and Durgy. I don't think I'm saying his name right. This was hard to find reviews on this game for some reason, so I'll just say its Metacritic score is a 71, which Metacritic describes as mixed or average. Then, huge gap as we cut to 3 years later when we finally get the next Transformers game with Transformers Earthspark Expedition, released to the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox One and Series X and S, and PC. Developed by Tessera Studios, published by Phoenix in Japan, Bandai Namco Entertainment in Europe, and then Outright Games anywhere else. In this game, Bumblebee and other Autobots learn that the villain Mandroid is still alive and plans to use old Cybertronian technology to create a robot army. So Bumblebee goes after him. Bumblebee then makes it to one of Mandroid's lairs and is just taunted by him through screens as Mandroid says he's going to make Bee's species go extinct. Bee has multiple run-ins with Skullcruncher during this time. Bee then heads to a dig site run by Mandroid, where Bee has to fight a controlled Grimlock, who he eventually subdues and frees. Bee then heads to Mandroid's mining facility, which is a trap, and Bee is ambushed by 2 Decepticons, who he defeats and throws into a cell. Bumblebee then meets back up with Optimus, who's being mind-controlled by Mandroid, who puts his consciousness into a robot. Bee defeats Mandroid, freeing Optimus of his control, saving the day, with the game ending with Bee getting properly praised. This game is a 3D third-person game with hack-and-slash combat and lets you transform between vehicle and robot mode. A good sign for any Transformers game. You explore 3 different biomes, the canyon, the jungle, and the mountain, where you fight through the area to retake the area from Mandroid. In this game, you only play as Bumblebee, with Optimus Prime and Grimlock being the only other present Autobots. Then Skullcruncher, Nova Storm, and Skywarp as the Decepticons present in the game, and then the Terrans in this game, which are Earthborn Cybertronians, I believe, this game having Twitch, Thrash, Hashtag, Jawbreaker, and Nightshade. The game has an 8.3 user score on Metacritic, meaning it has generally favorable reviews. Then we get to the present year, as of recording this, 2024, with Transformers Galactic Trials, just released 3 days ago as of this recording on October 11th, 2024. When I started making this video, this game was just announced, and now it is here. Gives you an idea of how long this video's been taking me. This was released to the Switch, PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox One and Series X and S, and the PC, developed by 3D Clouds and published by Outright Games. In this game, Nemesis Prime has stolen the Prime relics, causing a race to them by the Autobots and Decepticons. This game is a racing game. Kind of surprising it took this long in the series for one. The closest thing was Transformers Animated The Chase, but that arcade game doesn't really count for this. Just surprising that such a vehicle-based franchise is just now getting a true dedicated racing game. This game also does have some 3D person shooter elements in it as well, and from the looks of the trailer, it appears that there are item blocks just like in Mario Kart. Not sure what they do yet. I still have to get in there myself and play, but they look interesting. In this game, there's Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, RC, Wheeljack, and Elita 1 for the Autobots, then Megatron, Soundwave, Shockwave, Flame War, and Nightbird for the Decepticons, with Nemesis Prime also being in the game. Now, there aren't a lot of reviews out for the game, but they are positive on Steam so far, but that is just a small sample size. Now, we've looked at every single Transformers game ever. So let's take a look back holistically at the games and see what Transformers have appeared the most throughout the games, as well as what systems have had the most Transformers games on them. Starting with the Transformers themselves. The Transformer that appears in more games than any other Transformer is Megatron, appearing in a whopping 35 Transformers games, because more often than not, he is the main antagonist in any Transformers game. Now, this is including his appearances in Beast War titles. Now, I mentioned this earlier, the Predacon Megatron is supposed to be a different character from normal Megatron, but there's a certain dialogue that makes me think otherwise, at least in these games, with Megatron having endings in some of these titles referencing his feud with Optimus Prime. So if you don't count his Beast Wars appearances, Megatron drops to third in appearances with 32. So who takes the top spot if you separate the Megatrons? The ones you all expected. It is a tie between Optimus Prime and Bumblebee, both having 33 titles. 2 less than Megatron's total, both appearing in every game after 2005. But not appearing in any of the Beast Wars games, and then Optimus being in Transformers 2004, which B isn't, and B being in Transformers Battle to Save the Earth, which Optimus isn't, due to him being dead at this point in time. But it makes sense. They go back and forth as the face of the franchise, and Peter Cullen, more often than not, lends his beautiful voice to Optimus Prime in these games. Then, the next most featured Transformers is the Decepticon number 2, Starscream. Starscream being the last Transformer to appear in 30 or more games, as he sits at 30 exact appearances. If you take away his Predacon version, he's got 28, still comfortably in 4th place. Other notable appearance counts are Soundwave at 25 and Shockwave at 22, rounding out the Mount Rushmore of Decepticons. Ratchet also has 22, and then Ironhide has 21, some high-profile Autobots, those being the last Transformers to have at least 20 appearances. Now here's all the Autobots with at least 10 appearances, then the Decepticons with at least 10 appearances. Then, for the Beast Wars side of things, we have Optimus Primal as the highest occurring Maximal with 6 appearances, the highest for either side, with Black Arachnia and Waspinator having the most for Predacons with 4 apiece. As due to there being only 3 dedicated Beast War titles, most Maximals and Predacons only have 3 appearances, with some having some appearances in a couple other games, like Cheetor, who has 5 appearances. But that's pretty much it for counting out the Transformers. Now, let's take a look at what consoles allowed you to play the most Transformers games. The system that allows you to play the most games is the PC, with 12. Not really surprising, it's the easiest system to make games for, it seems. But the second most games of any system is a tie of 7 between the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. 2 systems that have overlapping lifespans, meaning they both were the main system during a peak of Transformers games, at least in terms of quantity. The Wii and DS with 6 titles each, the PlayStation 4 and iOS have 5, PlayStation 2 and Android have 4, Switch and 3DS have 3, then here's all the systems with 2 games, now all the systems with just 1 title. So that is the entire history of every Transformers game ever. This franchise has definitely had its ups and downs in terms of video games, but I really think it hasn't been utilized properly, at least in recent years. Transformers is first and foremost meant to be fun, and I believe a revitalization of this franchise in the video game space would be great for everyone. Robots at War, combining fun firefight combat with vehicle simulation, just sounds like a blast anyone could enjoy. But we'll just have to wait and see what this franchise has in store going forward.